All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the Sage Hour, and we're just going to give a few more minutes for people to log in, and then we're ready to start. But meanwhile, sit back and relax as you enjoy the introductory slides on Sage as we share our screen here. Some technical. Let me see. It's not rolling. Let me try again. There you go. Caroline, can you see my screen?
I can see it, but...
Is it rolling?
No.
Oh gosh.
It's not rolling. It's not rolling.
Okay, let me try again. Let's, I should be sharing this. I'll share the screen then. Okay, let's try. Let me try again. Oops. Is it good?
Yes, I can see the Sage story.
Great.
And it's rolling.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. So I can see that most of us are already in. Okay, so once again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Sage Publishing is pleased to have you with us today in our inaugural event, Sage Hour, which is a series of webinars aiming to share useful publishing tips or industry news that are current yet important. My name is Irene Lai, Regional Marketing Manager in Sage Asia Pacific. Before I start introducing our first speaker, I just want to let you know a few things. First, your microphone is by default muted. And you may type in your questions in the Q&A box, and Caroline will answer them after her presentation. Or otherwise, I'll have my lovely colleagues at the back end helping to answer as many questions as possible during this session. But if we can't get to all the questions in time, we will definitely consolidate them and answer them via email. Again, no need to raise hand, just type in the Q&A box with your questions. Again, second, the entire session will be recorded and the recording will be sent to you after this session. So without further ado, let's welcome Caroline, publisher for editorial Sage Journals. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you very much. Are you able to see the slides?
Not yet.
Can you see the slides?
No.
We can't hear you, Caroline.
No.
Oh.
We still can't see the slide.
Right. I'm sharing my screen, Irene. Right, are you able to see them now?
Yes, we can now.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay,
We can
thank
see
you.
it.
Apologies,
Oh, we can't
everyone.
hear you yet.
You can't hear me? Right, I'm not on mute.
I can hear you, Caroline.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can. Can
Okay.
others check?
We can't hear you yet, Caroline.
You can. Shall I continue?
I can hear you, Caroline. It's over my end. It's fine.
Yes, it is now.
Okay,
Oh, it is now. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Irene, for that warm introduction. So without further ado, let's start with a broad overview of the publishing process. This presentation, these slides will take about 20 minutes. So this chart illustrates the timeline of the typical author journey, moving from the early stages of securing funding and conducting research, all the way through peer review and publication. You may spend months, even years, conducting research and gathering data, but the work certainly doesn't stop there. Sometimes writing the actual paper can be the most daunting. Getting published can be hard and standards are high, but there are a few tips we can share that will help along the way to ensure you succeed. First off, ensure your work is original. Avoid splitting one experiment or piece of research into several papers. That's called salami slicing. Share the workload, consider working with co-authors. You can allocate responsibilities and set each other deadlines and so forth. Read current journal articles in your field of study. Have you been through your literature review? Once you're ready to sit down and put pen to paper, plan time to brainstorm. Writing takes time and energy. Be sure to take time to outline and organize your manuscript. Ensure you have enough material, research, and data. Do you already have a journal in mind? Write for that journal. Once you've completed your first draft, resist the temptation of submitting it as soon as you've finished it. Let it breathe for a while and come back to it before submitting it. Read, reread, and revise. And then ask a colleague to read it. Sleep on it, then revise once more. Go over it multiple times and make sure all your key elements are there. Don't submit incomplete work and expect the journal editors or reviewers to do the job of finishing the paper for you. The Sage Author Gateway has a variety of resources, including links to English language editing services, author guidelines, the importance of search engines, how to get the title right, an FAQs page, and more. Maybe even find an experienced writer to help you. Look to others who've been published before for guidance. It's important to think about who you should name as the author. Authorship consists of these 4 criteria. Are there others who were involved but maybe don't meet all of these criteria? You can and should list them in the acknowledgements section. It's now time to consider which journal you'd like to submit to. It's crucial to do your homework. Whilst you might be wanting to publish in a leading journal in your field, you first need to think about the best home for your paper. As you are exploring journals, think about the journal's reputation. What do your peers say about a journal? What type of papers does the journal publish? What type of paper are you publishing? Is it empirical research, a review paper, brief report, or book review? Does the journal publish these kind of papers? What does your article reference publications that might be a good fit for your research? Does your paper fit within the aims and scope of a journal you're eyeing up? Check out who the editor is and who sits on the board and how highly cited they are in your field. Is the editorial board diverse? Do you know someone who's published in the journal that you can consult? Does the journal state the current rejection rate or turnaround time? What is the peer review policy? Are peer review comments published openly? What is the readership of the journal and is it indexed? And if so, where? What's the impact factor? What do the journal's key metrics tell you? Check whether your institution has any restrictions on where you could submit articles. For example, do they require that you publish in a journal which has got an impact factor? Does the journal you're looking at provide an open access option if needed? Finally, be on the lookout for predatory publishers, journals who don't do proper peer review. These are on the rise. Make sure the journal you're submitting to is included in indexes such as Scopus and PubMed. So once you decide which journal you want to submit to, read the manuscript submission guidelines for that particular journal and follow them. We cannot emphasize enough how much editors appreciate the effort you put in. If you do not follow the guidelines, there is a large chance your paper might be unsubmitted and sent back for adjustments before even being considered. As you're getting ready to submit, make every effort to improve the quality of your manuscript and try to be objective about your work. Write for that journal's particular audience. Read the aims and scope and tailor your manuscript accordingly. Make sure to include information on your submission, funding, conflict of interest, and ethics statements, even if you have nothing to declare. Be sure your article is structured properly. The outline we highlight here is the most common, but the journal you're submitting to will have the appropriate structure you should follow in their manuscript submission guidelines. The introduction should identify a clear, compelling statement of purpose. The methodology section should be clear, meaningful, answerable, interrelated, and flow logically from the introduction. The results section discusses the key findings, while discussion covers what the results mean. Finally, the conclusion brings awareness to the limitations and doesn't go beyond the evidence. It might even outline future studies which are needed. If no one reads your findings, what's the use of disseminating your research? Help readers find your article with a well-written title and abstract. Keywords are still important in optimizing the discoverability of your article. To maximize search engine optimization and gain traction, it's important to choose keywords carefully. Include your keywords in your title and your abstract. Repeat the most important ones where appropriate and without losing the natural flow of the language. It's key to keep in mind what users are likely to be typing into Google when looking for your article. With a strong title, abstract, and keyword list, there is more chance for your work being discovered, read, and cited. It's possible editors might not even take a look at your manuscript for several reasons. Some common reasons for this include authors not thoroughly reviewing submission guidelines, incorrect formatting of tables and figures, the topic not being an appropriate fit for the journal, sending in the wrong manuscript type, and or poor grammar and syntax. There's one thing you take away from this webinar, please be sure to read and follow the author submission guidelines. Write for the journal you're submitting to. Perhaps you're not quite ready to submit to a peer-reviewed journal and instead would like to quickly disseminate your research to colleagues in your field and gather feedback. There are numerous preprint servers you can submit to based on the kind of research you do. Preprints are websites that allow you to upload the first version of your manuscript and gather feedback from your peers immediately. Please note, preprint servers are not peer-reviewed, but allow quick dissemination of your work before publishing your work in a peer-reviewed academic journal. Sage has its own preprint server in the humanities and social sciences called Sage Advanced. So you finally received notification that your article is going out for peer review. What exactly is peer review? Peer review is essential to the development of research across all subject areas. It helps filter out poor quality articles, assesses the validity of the science behind the manuscript, and helps maintain scientific integrity. There are three main types of review: single blind, double blind, and open. Single blind is where the name of the reviewer is hidden from the author. Double blind means names are hidden from both the reviewers and the authors. Open peer review, which is only embraced by a few journals at the moment, is when everyone is openly identified. If the journal embraces single or double blind peer review, please note reviewer confidentiality is strictly maintained. Be sure to understand which type of peer review the journal you're submitting to embraces, so you can properly blind your manuscript upon submission. The majority of Sage journals use the platform SageTrack, which is powered by ScholarOne. Some of you may know it previously as Manuscript Central. Once a paper is submitted, the editor determines if it fits within the journal scope. If the paper does not fit the aims and scope, or perhaps it recently published a paper on this topic, the paper will be desk rejected. Perhaps the editor sees initial fatal flaws. If it passes the initial checklist, your paper will most likely be sent out for peer review. The paper is sent out to at least 2 or 3 reviewers who are subject experts in your field. Reviewers assess and make recommendations to the editor, which will be one of the following: reject, accept pending major or minor revisions, or accept. Ultimately, the editor makes the final decision. Please know that peer review takes time and it's not something that happens overnight. It's possible you may face a rejection. In this instance, the reviewers are probably not convinced of the contribution to the knowledge base. Perhaps the methods are not robust enough for the journal, or specific sections are weak. Weak methodology could be, for example, too few observations on quantitative papers, or lacking transparency of qualitative methods. Maybe your paper was ill-focused or fundamentally flawed in their opinion. Try to take rejection in stride and not take it personally if you can. Criticisms are there to enhance your paper. Read the reviewer comments and editor's letter carefully. Focus on why the manuscript was rejected and rework the paper to address the reviewer concerns. Perhaps you can resubmit to the same journal, or maybe you have another journal in mind which may be a better fit after you make recommended revisions. If you've made it through the next round, it's very rare for papers to be accepted without any revisions. Most likely you will see accept pending major revision or accept pending minor revision. Read the reviewer comments and editor's letter carefully. Following the timeframes requested, once you're ready to resubmit, clearly demonstrate what you have changed point by point. Address each reference point in a separate document. In addition, we recommend highlighting changes in the document as well, because this makes it easier for your reviewers and editors to compare the point-by-point response to the revised document. For example, ask authors to submit a highlighted revision, but not using track changes, and ask a clean revision. If you can't meet all the criticisms, explain why in a positive, polite manner. Keep in mind the process may take 2 to 3 iterations. So congratulations, your paper has been accepted, but the work doesn't stop there. Check out the Sage Author Gateway, Sage's dedicated space for author support and services. Visit the website for more resources, tips and tricks while writing and how to promote your article after publication. Also outlined is which version of your paper you can share, where and when. We also have a Chinese Author Gateway that features translated materials. If you're still looking for additional guidance, we have an online learning platform called Sage Campus, on which we offer a course on how to get published. We also have a 3-part video series with some great tips and tricks that we're covering today. Plus, we have a handy PDF guide that you can reference and easily share with your colleagues. Now, in the remaining 12 slides, we'll look at how to do peer review. Aside from the benefits the peer review process has for each publication, there are also significant benefits for the peer reviewer. The most significant is the service a peer reviewer provides to their respective field. Each time someone does a peer review, they're directly helping to improve the quality of the article, offering the author new insights into their research methods and results, and giving the opinions of fellow experts in the field that can provide support and further insight. Increasingly, reviewers are recognized for their contribution. Benefits can include recognition via Publons and ORCID, where a reviewer can keep a record of publications and show which journals they reviewed for. Also, recognition can be shown with reviewer certificates and displayed as professional development and experience on a CV. Sage Publishing also offers some additional benefits to reviewers in recognition of their service. These include a 25% discount on Sage books and free access to ebook products and Sage journals for 60 days. More information on these benefits can be found in the reviewer rewards link listed on the slide. There are times when it's best to decline an invitation to review. One of them is when you don't have the expertise to review the article. If this is the case, please let the editor know why an article is outside your area of expertise. Also let the editor know if you're still working towards your degree in a particular field and you're not yet ready to review articles in that field. Another time you might decline to review is when you don't have time and you can't commit to a specific extension. However, if you have a specific extension and you could request and stick to it, it is worth letting the editor know before declining. Lastly, you should decline to review if you have a personal conflict of interest with, conflict of interest with the research or the authors that would prevent you from delivering an impartial review. For example, some financial stake in the research. This ties into the larger issue of reviewer ethics, which we cover in the next slide. To start, many journals use double-blind peer review. This means the authors do not know who the reviewers are and the reviewers do not know who the authors are. If you learn of the authors' identities when reviewing for a double-blind journal, for example, if the manuscript was not fully anonymized, then you should let the editor know right away. Definitely mention if learning the author's identities raises a particular conflict of interest for you. You should also let the editor know if you have some connection to the study that impacts study participants' privacy. For example, if you know someone involved in the clinical trial under review. Lastly, you'll have access to unpublished research, and it's important to keep the content of that research confidential. Next, we're going to talk about the evaluation criteria you should keep in mind when reviewing an article. At Sage, we use the phrase research well done to describe our bar for publication. We'll talk about how to identify research well done in the next few slides. When you're evaluating a manuscript, there are some characteristics of the writing and structure that you may notice immediately, such as whether the authors used an academic writing style. Though we're not looking for you to copy edit, we also appreciate general comments on language and on the language quality. Some aspects to consider include using concise language, simple sentence construction, and correct article use. You don't need to do the copy editing, but if you encounter enough issues to make the article difficult to read, please comment. Also comment if you have trouble following the article because it lacks cohesiveness. Some specific concerns might include the organization and overall flow of the manuscript. Lastly, we expect bias-free, inclusive language that is appropriate for a global audience. Authors should take care when writing about gender, age, disability, neurodiversity, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and religion. They should be sensitive to labels and appropriately specific. It's worth stating here that bias-free, inclusive research goes beyond our word choice and extends to the assumptions made by the researchers and the intention of the design of the study, for example, with the sampling. If you have concerns with any of this, please mention this in your review. So overall, first of all, the article should make a clear contribution to the field. Next, it's expected that research has appropriate ties to the literature. If you notice materials missing from the literature review and that would give necessary context to the study, please comment. Lastly, as a reviewer, you should be able to easily read any figures. If you have trouble, then the author should know to make corrections. Earlier, we spoke about reviewer ethics. This slide has to do with ethical guidelines the author should have followed when performing their study and writing their article. Feel free to ask the authors questions in your review and let the journal editor know if you have any concerns with the research ethics of the article you're reviewing. Specifically, feel free to ask for more details on how informed consent was obtained or who gave ethical approval. If you have concerns about the privacy of the study participants, please let the editor know. Lastly, let the editor know if you suspect any data or image manipulation. When it comes to looking at the methods and data analysis, there are a number of key items to focus on. The first is any flaws in the study design. Are there any clear concerns with the way in which the study was conducted? Is the study design consistent with similar studies in the field? Do the results and conclusions seem appropriate given the kind of study conducted? Is the material and methods section descriptive enough so that the study could be reproduced? Are the statistical techniques relevant to the study? Are they the standard for that kind of study? Are the materials and methods used for the study appropriate for the research question being addressed? A lot of the questions raised in analysing materials and methods flow into the results, discussion, and conclusion sections. Common questions to think about when reviewing these sections include: are the results presented in a way that best emphasises the findings? Are these sections free of unsupported generalizations or assumptions? Are the conclusions appropriate for the study? As you can see, there are a lot of things to think about when reviewing an article. By breaking down a review into sections that match the structure of the paper, a reviewer can thoroughly check all parts of the article and provide thorough feedback for the authors. So to conclude, now that you know what to look for when peer reviewing, how do you volunteer to review? There are two major ways you can start the journey. The first is to create an account in the journal's peer review site. Make sure to include strong keywords that best illustrate your research expertise. Examples of good keywords and those to avoid are shown on the right of the slide. Good keywords are generally those that are descriptive but not too descriptive. The second way to become a volunteer reviewer is by connecting with editors directly via email. Many have their email addresses on the journal's website, or by creating a Publons account. If you would like to learn even more about peer review, Sage offers a number of resources listed on this slide. Thank you very much for listening, and we now welcome questions.
Thank you, Caroline. So we do have a few questions here, in fact, lots of questions here. So I'm just going to read it to you so that it's easier. Okay, so I have someone ask, I'd like to know more about advanced and preprints which you have presented. But I think following that, to the background of it, she says that she submitted a paper to Sage Open. And about a month later, she received an email saying, has passed initial check and can consider to post to advance. I think she's trying to make out what this means.
That is interesting. I will respond after the meeting. I think I need to check in with the Sage Open team on that one.
Okay, all right, cool. So another one question is, why is editorial board important when choosing a journal?
That's a very good question. The editorial board really signifies many things about a journal, including the internationality of the journal. So a really strong journal will have an international board with representatives from around the world. It's also very useful for you to see if you know anyone on the board, or if you can identify really leading academics in your field who are sitting on the board, because that means that the journal is going to be really open to your research, because they will be publishing that type of content in the journal. I think it's also increasingly important to try and look at the gender diversity of boards too.
Thank you. And the next question is, okay, let me see, it jumps. How we know about acceptance rate?
That is a very good question too. It's not often put on the journal website, and that is a question that you can ask the editor directly. So with all SAGE journals, on the manuscript submission guidelines at the very bottom, there'll be a contact email address for the editor or the managing editor of the journal. And you should contact them directly and ask any questions, including ones about the acceptance rate, and they will get back to you.
Great. And the next question is about predatory journals. So it says, can you share criteria on identifying predatory journals, or does Beale lists of predatory journals reliable? And there's also another question which is quite similar and says, how do you know it's a predatory site versus a legitimate one?
Thank you. A predatory journal is a journal which is published solely to make money. So, and they don't do proper peer review. So they will encourage you to submit, and they will publish your article for a fee, but without doing any quality checks. Therefore, if you publish in that journal, it's bad for your career, actually, or it could be damaging to your career. Beale's list is a very good resource to check whether a publisher is included, and I would highly recommend that if you find a journal that's not obviously published by one of the major publishers, that you check it on Beale's list first. This applies to open access journals, obviously. And sorry, what was the final question? Part of the question was,
how do you define a predatory site versus a legitimate one?
Yeah, I would look at the publisher's site. So not only look at the journal site, but look at the overall publisher site. And you'll find that predatory publishers often have a very long list of journals they publish, but with very similar names. I think that you would then need to, if you have suspicions, go to Beale's list and double check.
Great. I also have another question here. Says, are there any advantages to choosing open access publishing if it's available at the journals? I think they're talking about hybrid. Are there additional fees to pay by the author for open access?
Yes, there are advantages in publishing open access in terms of the dissemination of your content, because the article won't be behind the paywall. It's more widely accessible globally, and that can help with downloads and also with citations. So there are many benefits. In terms of payments for publication, there are a variety of different models. So there's gold open access, called gold open access, and often the model with this is that the author has to pay an article processing charge on acceptance of their paper. But often the article processing charge is paid for by your funder. So if your research is funded, there will be an element of that funding finance which will go towards paying for the article processing charge. We often publish journals too, which have support from the society that owns them. So the society will cover the cost of the publication of the article on behalf of their authors. Oftentimes, you'll find that there are also waivers, which means either the price, the cost of the article is waived, so you don't have to actually pay, or you get a discount. For example, if you're a member of a society, or the editor of the journal is allowed to give a certain number of free open access articles a year in some journals. So it's definitely worth contacting the editor or reading the submission guidelines and the information about the journal very carefully when you're considering which journal to submit to and the cost that might be implicated in that.
Okay, I have a few questions here. I think they're quite similar, so I'm just going to group them into one. The question is about how do you know how long the paper is going to be? How long are they going to wait for the paper once they have submitted? And do they wait, or do they and how long do they stop waiting and start submitting to another journal?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Often in the manuscript submission guidelines or the information about the journal, there is an indication of how long the author will need to wait to get the first decision, and the first decision is whether the article will be going out to be reviewed, and then typically how long they will need to wait to get the first round of information back on the article from the reviewers or from the editor. Ideally, 6 weeks would be a good turnaround time for a humanities and social science journal to get some indication of whether your article is going to go through the full peer review process. Some editors are a lot quicker than others and will get back to you within a week to let you know if it's just a desk reject and the article isn't appropriate for that journal, and that's great because then you can go on and submit to another journal. But once your article is going into peer review, you should really wait to hear the final decision before you decide to resubmit it. I mean, obviously, if it takes sort of 6 months or something, you can contact the editor and ask them where they're at, and then you might offer to say, I want to withdraw my paper.
Thank you. And I think we have time for just one more question. And it says, and it's a question about the same thing on review. So let me just attempt to understand this one. It says that if the journal asks for review, what are the things we need to take care to accept the offer for review manuscript?
Right. I think from that I understand the question is about how do you know if it's appropriate for you to accept to be a reviewer?
Yes, I think so,
yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there are a few questions around being reviewer as well, and what's the criteria?
Yeah. Well, the first thing to say is that editors are always looking for reviewers. So, you know, it's, I think that you should really try and do a review if you possibly can, but there are instances where it's not possible. And as mentioned in the presentation, one is if you just don't have time, and be upfront about that. But if you feel that you would have, if you wanted an extension, because the editor might come to you and say, can you review this within a month or something? You know that you can't, you could do it in 6 weeks. Do get back to the editor and suggest 6 weeks, because I'm sure that they will be able to reach a compromise with you. The other is if it's outside your area of expertise. If the keyword search or the editor's slightly mismatched what the article's about with your area of expertise, then you should be upfront about that and decline. And also, if you're still not graduated yet, please be upfront about that too.
Thank you, Caroline. So I guess we have lots of great questions still coming in. So I think we'll consolidate that, and then we'll put that in the email back to all of you.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Caroline. And I hope this information is really useful for all of you. And do send us email if you want to know more. And we have another segment coming up. So the next up, we have a very interesting topic, insights and innovation shaping the future of work. This session was unfortunately being recorded just 1 hour ago, and there's some unforeseen circumstances that came out, which is why we have to present it to you in recording. But this dialogue was facilitated by Ms. Rosalia de Garcia, Managing Director of Sage Asia Pacific, and joining her are Professor Guy, Deputy Rector for Research and Innovation and University Technology Mara Selangor, and Ms. Elvira Lapus, University Librarians of University of the Philippines, Diliman. So let's hear from them.
Of Sage Publications in Asia Pacific. I'd like to thank my guests and panelists and co-panelists, Professor Guy and Elvira, for both agreeing to change the time and bringing a recording to you. But I'd also like to apologize to you that this will not be a live session, only because I have a really important meeting to attend at that time. But feel free to send us your emails, and very importantly, that if you want to be a part of the project that Professor Guy is doing, email her directly and she will be more than happy to hear from you. And you would have heard the introduction that's given by Irene. And so without further ado, I thought we go and dwell right into the topic of future of work. And what does it mean for all of us now, today, as compared to, say, 10 or 15 years ago, where things are different? And I like to kick off with what I call the world of work is changing. And if I could just get my fellow panelists to give their thoughts about what do they feel that if there is any impact automation and artificial intelligence will have on their work. So, Professor Guy, do you want to start first?
Sure. Thank you. I'm so glad to meet some of the overseas people. But anyways, coming back to the question you asked me just now, of course, the world of work has changed. Everything is now on automation. And in fact, all the meetings now, because of the pandemic lockdowns, we have to go do Google Meet. And even right now, we are on Zoom. Okay, so that shortened the distance. But as far as work's concerned with ICT, it has to be fast, quick, and accurate. And I think most of the people, the employees in Malaysia, they are on the bandwagon for that.
Thank you so much, Professor Guy. How about you, Elvira? I think you're muted, Elvira.
Okay, yeah, okay, sorry. Thank you again, Rosalia, for this opportunity to do the sharing with you. Okay, three things that, glaringly are the very things that, has affected job or work now because of technology, information communications technology, and this pandemic that we're experiencing now, is that there's this effect of human-robot collaboration, wherein task, there are specific tasks that has become that has been freed up. It has given workers more time to focus on other things because of automation, and that could mean having time to do other things, other high value tasks, right? So it is given us that what can we do with the time? We can do research, we can get ourselves involved in other creative endeavors. And what does it mean to our customers, to our clients? Okay, I am a librarian, and I'm really, really happy because there are things, or there are tasks that I don't really have to be, doing myself, because the machines can really do it, and I can do other tasks. I can perform other tasks, which I believe will be more beneficial to my organization. Another thing is, technology, as it is, has given us, more opportunities to make our work life flexible. See, it has given us, that flexibility, so that we can, make that or create our own balance the way we live our lives, right? And another thing, well, for organization, I think that the benefit is that they have this new ways of actually identifying talents that they need for their organization, right? It's become quite easy for them. We can do digital hiring. We can, there will be real how should I say it is, it has become a digital workplace for many of us, right? So I think that's where technology is, giving us those benefits. But I think the more important thing here is that technology has created new jobs and new job description for all of us. And the only thing is that it also requires us to have new skills. So it should come with that, right? So new jobs, new job descriptions, of course, new skills. And maybe we can talk about that later when we talk about continuing education, right? Because of these new requirements for us as workers in this day and time. Okay. That's
Thank you
all.
so much, Elvira. And yes, I think you touch on several key points itself. So from a corporate standpoint, I think automation and other trends have actually already is causing an occupational and skill shift across all local labor markets. Right. So we do see that coming, where certain skill sets, as you mentioned, are now being performed by through machine learning, is through AI, a lot of these. And those we see now very much. Just look at the everyday thing that we look at, a simple thing like our mobile phone. How easy
can't live without it.
Exactly. You can use it almost like your iPads or even as your desktop, because you can work, but you can communicate, you can do a lot of things. And I think what is happening in the areas of telecoms, financial services, real estate, and as well to some extent education, is showing that very much that the skill sets of people are now transcending into a different areas itself. I used to work for a bank, and in those days itself, not too long ago, the banks used to think that they are invisible. The old traditional style of a bank remains as it is. But I think the banks were caught very unaware or not prepared when it came to the sudden emergence of fintech. When the fintechs came across, you start seeing that all of the traditional things that the bank used to do are no longer required, right? Do you really need a bank teller? Or could you have, automated machines? And now you are seeing, when you go to immigrations and airports, you all have to do is a scanning of your face, image recognition, and that is happening already. But we need people who come in to understand the importance of automation, because it is part and parcel of our lives. But to take this conversation a little far stretch, there's a small little island on the Pacific called Marshall Islands, which introduced something called digital currency. And where, that the money that we used to know, it is no longer in existence. So they invested heavily in an Israeli company to actually have quite a fair bit of development of digital currency. And that was last year, and today they're still using normal currency. But if you look at China, the People's Bank of China has started to roll out digital currency, blockchain across things like what we do, food delivery, taxi, and stuff like that. So I think it's very important, and both my panelists really talk about the fact that this is the future. This is going to create what we call a dynamic growth hubs. How fast the generation that is graduating now versus the generation that is already at work can embrace automation and machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think that will be a question that we will answer in a short while. And I think I also want to bring back again to both of what you are saying itself. So can we just zoom in on in your areas of work itself? What were the jobs that did not exist anymore? And what are the jobs that have been created as a result of automation and AI? Can I start with you, Professor Guy?
Oh, okay. Well, since I'm in the academia, I'm into research and innovation. The jobs, part of the curriculum for the students here in UITM, of course, we have to have those ICT-based subjects. But at the same time, they have to start learning. For example, now the use of social media is very, very important. But at the same time, we gotta curb them from, disseminating fake news, especially now during the pandemic, where everybody is starting to feel nervous with the second or third wave and the lockdowns that we have to comply to. But coming back to your question just now, I truly agree with what Elvira said, where we have to be multitasking with most of our work. There used to not be a Grab or even a food service on the bikes, but now we do, okay? And then buying grocery online, prior to that, I don't do that, but now I do, all right? But the chance again with telecommuting or telework for most of the staff during the lockdowns, prior to that, there were issues of trust. So I have this ongoing research where we are trying to have a policy made where we can allow the staff to continue working at home after the lockdowns, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Professor Guy. Elvira, yes, your thoughts, please.
Oh, well, if I can only speak, from the profession I am practicing now. I am a librarian, but I also do, I also handle courses. I teach part-time. I'm a senior lecturer in our school here in the University of the Philippines. And one thing that we're actually focusing more on now is on information literacy, okay, media literacy, because if I may follow up on Professor Guy's point earlier, we really have to take, some form of control over our students, because I believe that we can still, they're still in their formative years. We can still teach them. We can still, make them, absorb things, okay, and we can still make them. It's going to be, it's still going to be quite a challenge, but still we can make them, we are in the very best position to make them realize that, there are certain things that you can just, do with all the social media that you have. One point I want to raise is that, yeah, the students now are quite adept. They embrace technology quite well. But using the social media for, for just as it is, for social, you use it to interact. But, it is a different use if you're going to use it as a professional. Right, so there's a big difference there, and we have to make them realize that it's just it is very, very important that you have to know how to separate your personal life from your professional life. And with all the social media presence now, it's going to be quite a challenge making them realize that. So yeah,
I think both of you raised a very important question about the use of social media, and I think both of you came with a very strong response or indication, which I agree in that being very familiar with the current social media apps or social media networks that we use for personal does not necessarily equate that one is ready to be able to embrace the use of social media within in the jobs itself. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the skill sets that will be required for the undergraduates. But before I finish this topic, I wanted to just go very quickly to just give our viewers from the standpoint of all of the industries globally, from a research that is being done out by various research companies, that most job, and I think Professor Guy, you preluded to that, that will be potentially displaced by automation is wholesale and retail. That will be the first thing that because the idea of going to a shop or going to a supermarket is no longer something we are quite used to just using our phone and getting it. Manufacturing is automated because you want to get it perfect, you want to get it fast. Humans can be used in parts of looking out for efficiencies and defects in whatever that's been produced, but you don't really need that. And the other thing is that, and it will be very interesting to see on aviation and accommodation and food services itself. Food services we know are automated, but accommodation, hotels, and aviation with COVID-19, what are they doing? But they themselves have already automated to some extent as far as they can. But when you come to education, it is not high in that list. You can basically displace. And the area of research of Professor Guy, which is agriculture, is even lesser. You can't replace, you can have green agriculture, agro-agriculture, whatever, but you need human intervention. And then I think the least affected will be mining and quarrying. And so I think, and arts, So I think it's important for our attendees and delegates to understand that in the area of education where most of us in, there is a place for us and there's a place for automation or AI. Do the panelists agree with this kind of the summation that I come with?
Yeah, I agree with you. So I'll jump in, okay? So for UITM here in Malaysia, we have used AI for many, many things. In fact, only yesterday I was given a card where we want to use AI in football or soccer. For example, you want to score a goal, you have to have this kind of observance where we know where are the players and what is the percentage for the person to score. I'm not quite into soccer, but I do watch them once in a while. And also for AI in agriculture, let me tell you this, we have already started into aquaculture as well for the species called Microbrachium rosenbergi, where you see that food security is important as part of SDG. So actually we have come full circle, and we have also integrated drone technology in agriculture, and that is also part of my research, as well as underwater in aquaculture. So if you were to ask me again whether we are ready, you have to look at the segments of community. In education, in fact, there are some lecturers in academia who are quite slow in picking up, even though we are into ODL and MOOC and whatnot. Okay, so e-literacy is also questionable. And you have to remember, all these require accessibility, good internet access.
True. Thanks. How about you, Elvira?
Well, of course, if we start, we're gonna start talking about how AI is affecting work and how it is affecting industries. And I would like to zero in more on how people are asking about their job. The very basic question is my job safe? Right. I may be replaced before I know it, and but for some optimists, they can argue that AI or robots, are affecting jobs on a more positive light. Like I mentioned earlier, there may be tasks that might just completely disappear, but the new tasks are actually being created. And in one study, I think it was done last year on the future of jobs. It was reported that yes, around 75 million jobs will be lost because of automation of all these AIs and robots. But there will be 133 million more that will be created. So I suppose we just have to first thing, go with the tide. If this is what's being required of us now, just have to be able to cope with it, learn anew. And make it our own personal agenda.
Yep.
you know, right? So that we won't be left behind. And then, of course, with the help of our own institutions, the industries we're in, we can, no, we can just, be part of it. We can continue. We can, be the professional that we would like to be. So it's, this is how I would like to see these things now. And one thing that I would definitely want to share and teach my students.
Fantastic, ladies. I suppose now we can go into the crux of the conversation about the future of work, and especially the future of women at work in particular, in the space of automation itself. So I think the first thing that we will have to look is, so I will bring the corporate perspective of what I see in all of the industries. But do we feel that we have ways to, or enablers for women to seize new opportunities in the automation age? Are there struggles that women need to overcome in this time as compared to their male counterparts? Elvira?
As I was preparing for this conversation, I came across some views, some points that were made before on how, particularly during this time, this time that we are in this pandemic, how women were actually, experiencing greater challenges. For example, it used to be that working mothers, will have a respite from their day-to-day, demands of maintaining a household, taking care of the kids, and they will have that respite because they go to work. They go to their offices, and then it's just an opportunity for them to get away from all these demands of being a mom or maintaining. But then this pandemic happens, and now they have to work at home. And now it's double the struggle of, being there at home, trying to be productive, trying to constantly and be a create contribution to their companies, and also take care of the household, take care of the kids, and they have to do it. And we all have 24 hours a day. It wouldn't be different if I say if I'm working and I'll have more hours in my hand, but no, it's not. So I see that in that particular, in that specific area, where I can see that women, are having these bigger challenges now. But in terms of, dealing with automation, and technologies, I think, I would say I believe that we are able to cope. I mean, there's really no difference now. It's just that we have this role, that we have to play, and it somehow it is that creates, the bigger challenges for us. Not the technology, not the demands of new ways of doing things. We've coped with that. We've prevailed somehow. We've understand it. We've embraced it. So it's just that the women's role remains, and that is trying to balance those things, those things that were expected of us, societal, even biological, we have to carry kids now home for 9 months, and yet we're expected to work and deal with all this, these expectations. So that for me is, I think, the real challenge.
So well said, Elvira. How about you, Professor Guy? What are your thoughts? Anything in addition what Elvira has said?
In gender studies right now, at the macro level, look at 2 decades ago, there were not that many women leaders, but now you see all these women leaders, the prime ministers doing very well, especially with handling the pandemic. New Zealand, for example, we have our there. And actually for Malaysia, the women are the pillars of strength. When we have the pandemic lockdown, doesn't mean that they stay at home, do nothing. Actually, they have been very innovative by starting all these online, businesses, and that contributed to the economy. So I think that women nowadays don't look down on them. They are the pillars of strength, and they do quite a lot of work that men were doing then, and they are doing it now. I also would like to touch on the percentage of students in UITM, where we now have 70% of female students compared to 30% of male students. So you see, there's this wide gap discrepancy. And by that, it shows that when it comes to detailed work, women are much, much better than men. So I don't want to be a feminist, but that is how the world goes right now.
That's how things are now, right? That's how things are now.
But I think so. I mean, in addition, in the Philippines, I think in our region in Southeast Asia, I think the Philippines and part of Indonesia has shown in the political arena the power of women to hold a very strong position in leading the country. And I agree with both of you that the time is already there for a long time where there's no such thing as construction. You see an all male workforce. You are now seeing females, including pilots, whereas although at one point the CEO of Qatar Airways said that to run an airline is a man's job, but you are seeing people think differently. And I think within the publishing industry, Elsevier has a female CEO. The owner of Sage is a female. And it's very interesting when you look at the dynamics of the what we call diversity and inclusion, which is what I think both my panelists are preluding to. And it's an important aspect of what we're looking at. When I first joined Sage, at the top quartile of the Asia Pacific operations, it was 85% men, 15% women. And then at one point we became 90% men, 10% women. But today, and it's not that we deliberately designed by it, 100% of the senior management group in Sage Asia Pacific are women. We have some men, but and it just came out by itself. So because we as a company say, we look for the best person that can do the job, not the best gender. We look at the best person. But if we look at the bigger picture, you look at the IT companies and you look at what we have just been talking about, some of the jobs that may be lost. And if you look at the kinds of industry, women tend to dominate those industries that we just sort of talk about. I think it's so important that women be empowered to, by themselves and by companies, to make sure that they embrace automation. While the jobs get displaced, the jobs gets lost by automation, women, because of their ability like men, should be able to embrace automation and see that as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to become better at what they do. And so, and again, as we look, and I know that we have in our midst some delegates from Africa. If you look at the number of women entrepreneurs in Africa, there are a lot, and they're very successful, and they are very progressive. So I think that as we look at corporate jobs, and as opposed to, for example, in education or in the library, I think we all agree are dominated primarily by women. Yep. But if you look at the IT companies, the Cisco's of today, Google of today, or even Facebook, I think it's important for women to embrace their femininity, be proud of the fact that we are women, but yet say that we can do a job as equal as men. Not that the men cannot do better sometimes than us, but I think all of us have to embrace the fact that it is so important to hire on the basis of who is the best job, without having any biasness, without having any prejudices that so and so have to be the person that is actually best able to do the job. So I found, for example, that when I remove all of that, it becomes very easy. And a very good example is that in China, now most of you know the Han Chinese. When we start opening up our doors and say we want what we call minorities, and lo and behold, the best candidate happen to be a minority. So we are not saying that we go and deliberately look for one, but when we hire the best person. So when you look at diversity and inclusion, which is very much the core, and which I think Elvira and I were talking about yesterday, is that it becomes very key that we do not let gender nor ethnic background or even sexual orientation to determine who can do the best job for the role that we are looking to hire. Any other thoughts from both of you?
Elvira, you want to go first?
Okay, yeah, I've always, personally, I've always been an advocate of, this inclusivity and diversity. Just recently, I made it a point to let our university administration know that as the new university librarian, it's going to be part of my mission, my goals to be making sure that we'll be only be hiring people based, on talent and their qualifications, not because they're of this color because of they're of this gender orientation. So we don't have that. And luckily for me, my university has always been known for being just that, an inclusive university. We're all for diversity. We embraced all genders, LGBTQ presence in my universities. They're quite dynamic. So I really have I should say I really have no exposure with regards to conflicts regarding this area, be it about hiring, be it about identifying people who are going to be part of our institution. So luckily for me, I don't have issues with that. I have yet to encounter issues with that. Luckily for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Elvira. Professor Guy?
Yeah, I agree with Elvira, but I want to go back into theory on the organizational behavior aspects and even human resource development. You got to look at who you want to employ. For example, right now I am the boss, and when I want to make sure that the structure of the people that I want to have, I look at how many are male and how many are female, because I need to have a balance, right, gender diversity within my jurisdiction. Because if I were to have someone who is still able to have kids, you see, for Malaysia, the maternity leave is 3 months. So who's going to take care of work for the next 3 months? That's why I have to have a balanced workforce, right? So
I agree, definitely, because that's one concern really. You mentioned that, for example, librarianship is still a very female-dominated profession. It's very true, even here in the Philippines. But we also have that same policy with regards to giving maternity benefits to our women workers. Ours is 100 days plus other leave benefits. So yeah, I think trying to strike a balance in terms of numbers of people being that are part of your organization is, yeah, it's an administrative thing. We really have to be very, quite focused on this. So yeah, thank you. I think that's a very good point. That's a very good point, Dr. Guy.
So if you look at the corporate environment, it's slightly more different if you look at the maternity leave, because we have such thing called the paternity leave. So we in our Sage company as well, so we had one colleague in Malaysia, his wife gave birth and then he took paternity leave. So because we don't believe that it is solely the responsibility in this modern age, the responsibility of raising a child rests on one parent, is on both parents itself. So we have that. But I think, Professor Guy, you mentioned a very key element of diversity and inclusion. And so if anyone of you want to look at our LinkedIn, we'll have a video that talks about the fact that, so while I have the senior most top members are females, I have another layer of senior managers that I make sure I have not only diverse groups of people, I also have a lot more males in that, because the beauty of diversity, and be it gender, be it sexual orientation, be it ethnic differences, allows us as a corporate organization to make better decisions and much more informed decisions that we would have made if we are all single-minded in one area itself. So I thought this will bring us very nicely into the next topic that we will focus on. And for all of our guests in there itself, the question about what fundamental skills do students need? And when it comes to professors and lecturers itself, what skills do they have to embrace automation? Because now we talk about COVID-19, and then all of a sudden, the concept of a printed textbook disappears. The concept of teaching in classes disappears. And then everyone is scrambling now to change the way they are teaching to make it more engaging via an online platform. So, Professor Guy, I want to start with you first. Could you just share with us what advice would you give to the audience here, be it professors or lecturers or students coming out and into the workplace, about the fundamental skills that they need to look at?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've been with the university for almost 30 years, but I don't want to look at the tacit skills as everybody's saying right now. At the end of the day, we need to have these traits: passion, precision, and patience. So with students from my university, they come from all walks of life. So when we put them together, there's those that comes from a fluent family, so they've had it all their life. And then when you have people coming in from the villages and whatnot, you see, they feel like, they lack something. So when you mention the skill part of it, for the lecturers and academicians, they have to be more considerate. We don't have a choice right now, even though we are in this 21st century, but at the end of the day, we still have to pay attention to the laggards. We have to make sure that we fulfill the emotional quotient, and we be there for them at the end of the day. So my role with my students are like that too. I have to be around. For example, I have to prompt them. Have you been doing something with your thesis? Then if they don't, I'll have to chase them. So the skill sets would depend on whether they have these 3 Ps: passion, precision, and patience. The traits.
Well said, Professor Guy. Elvira, how about you? You're muted, Elvira.
Sorry, I'm going to speak about. I'm going to speak from from personal experiences that I'm currently having now here in the university. I'm seeing it as something where reverse mentoring can be beneficial, not only in terms of, say, the age difference when it comes to, okay, this is a young worker here, a young student here, teaching an older or a more senior member of the staff, or maybe sharing to his or her older professors or more senior professors. It can be done, and at some point, maybe it's the only thing we can do. I mean, we cannot just learn things overnight. We cannot just be experts in all this ICTs that for some people are being forced to embrace, because somehow that's the only way we can survive this, right? So I'm quite open with the idea of, yeah, I can learn from my juniors that this things that I know and I'm sure are, that I am knowledgeable may not be the knowledge or the things that I can share or I can teach now. I may have to do revisions on my basic syllabus. So that's the thing. And in practice, just currently, we had to deal with members of the faculty, who are at loss completely. I mean, and they will have to rely on us for guidance, for when they are required to work on their syllabus, which used to be or on print, and then just share it with their students. Now they have to do it online. And when you do library research in the past, it's very much, doing it on the traditional, the traditional approach. You going to the physical library, searching through all this, rows and rows of print collection that we have. Our more senior faculty will have no difficulty in doing that. Okay, somehow we've given them options, like, okay, if you're into doing the more traditional way of doing research or preparing for your lessons, we have our print collection with you, so we have no problem with that. We continue to acquire print materials. That's fine. But here comes the pandemic, and every one of us needs to stay home. Libraries are closed. The whole, this we have more than 1 million in our print collection. They're no longer accessible. So what happens? Our faculty now will have to, just to learn, like, okay, we have online databases, we have electronic books, we have all this, open resource, online libraries. Just have to teach them how to use it. But then, it's going to be, it is, and until now, it's quite a challenge, because you cannot just, I don't know, I don't want to say that you cannot teach new tricks to old dogs, but no, that's definitely not. No, but we will, and we gonna continue teaching them. We're gonna continue to assist them, because that's why we're here. That's why they have their librarians now, because we can, give assistance to them. And we, the more important thing, and I just want to make it to emphasize on this now, is we have to really make our presence felt in the university. I would like to say that they have better appreciation now of the library because of the librarians, not only because of the resources that we're able to provide. It's more because we assist them. We make things easy for them. We make them realize that yes, they can continue. They can continue to teach. They can continue to do research because the library is still there, and the resources, the information resources, are still there. That's how.
And it's fantastic. I think both my fellow panelists, I think, if I had to sum up, I think what you are saying is that learning itself is a skill.
Yeah.
And you need to change your mindset, and you need to develop new skill sets in order to boost your own personal or even professional lives and deliver a competitive edge. And this is so true in everything that we do. So I always use this term that, and I was sharing that with some of you in that sense. I said, I like to hire young people, and most of the time everyone gets a shot. But my definition of young is not age. My definition of young is the mentality and the attitude. I have one person in my group who's 65 years old. I consider her as young, because she's embracing technology. She's embracing and learning new skill sets every day in order to keep abreast and remain relevant in her job, because the skill sets we have when we join any company or any organization will evolve very quickly. But if you get stuck in that space of that skill set, and I think a lot of people feel that once I graduated, I've done. I don't need to go back to school. But COVID has actually reminded us that going back to school is so important. Lifelong learning should be a part and parcel of who we are, to define us, to remain relevant in the jobs that we are doing. And I think that is very important because, I mean, I think all of you know the term growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And a growth mindset or growth mentality, it's about how can I progress? How can, and already you talk about it, how can I learn from somebody? And Professor Guy, you talked about the fact that how you are already introducing, but sometimes we have to learn from someone who may be a junior person. So it is opening, and that requires a certain sense of humility that, hey, I need to learn, you know, because what I used to do is no longer sort of relevant. And how do you unlock that? I think we all should foster learning by not only having a growth mindset, but also you need to be curious. You need to be excited about learning, because it's not like, OMG, I have to learn. Oh God, I have to go back to school again. But it's about, I'm excited, I'm learning new things. It should spark inspiration. It should tell you that curiosity means that it's a circle that brings you up continuously as you grow and learn in your job. And coming back to publishers and researchers that are submitting to us. Now, both of you talk about how you, Professor Gaia, how you teach, and Alvira about how professors rely on you. On the publisher standpoint, when you do all the search engine, you see a very easy result that come with. But there is a lot of AI, there's a lot of algorithms that has been set up. So those of you, and I'm not promoting the product, but I'm just giving you an example. We have two products that is very specific. One is Sage Research Methods. There's a huge amount of AI algorithms behind the scenes that allows you to be able to select a methodology when you're doing your research and have, you know, contrasting or even methods that is in sort of complementary to what you're doing. But that requires a whole backdrop of AI. And then we have another component, Adam Matthew, where we have, and that is primary sources. If you're doing history, there's a lot of local old documents that is handwritten. How do you transform that into digitally? And that's the use of HDR, right? Handwritten text technology, and that is a lot of the use of AI as well as machine learning. But again, from the professor's standpoint, citations, right? We hear a lot of synthetic or synthetic analytics that allows you to improve your citation. How do you use that? There's so many tools that are there. What we found from the publisher's standpoint in our research is that automation, artificial intelligence can work very much in our favor and work together with us. But the problem is that when it comes to automation in our field, whether it be the librarian, whether it's in a corporate office or whether you're a professor, we tend, our own fears inhibit us from embracing the new things. Doesn't apply to everybody, but I think it applies to people who are hesitant. And I always give this good example. So there are many universities, George Tech, Tsinghua University in China, where robots are circulating the librarian and library, and where students don't have to bother about manual signing in or asking questions. 24 hours, there is a robot or there's an AI behind the scenes that can answer all of your basic questions. Is there classroom tomorrow because there's COVID-19? I think AI can and will be beneficial to us, and all of us who are going up there will have to realize whatever profession you are going into, the use of AI is becoming very core to who we are and how we make decisions going forward. So with that, if my panel guests have no other words, or shall I give you some time to just say, one or two words before we sum up and close this session?
So you want to start with me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Sage has been very, very helpful with their platforms and assistance, okay? Thank you, Rosalia, for the Sage Room. At the end of the day, maybe I'm a baby boomer and I like books, I'm passionate about books. I don't mind staying in the library and reading all those Sage books. But the content of the books are very, very important in academia, especially for those that I am guiding and mentoring in research and innovation. And then especially the publication part. You got to read. At the end of the day, you got to read if you are in academia. So trying to make them to spend time, even to log on to the online databases and start, searching for whatever areas that they want to do. And also, with the SRMO, that is also very helpful. At the end of the day, you got to have refresher courses. You got to make sure when you publish that your methodology is correct. And that in itself is very important. Now, I think I was telling Irene about this. The contest for coming from Sage has been very fulfilling and apt with the turn of the century. For example, there are new areas of methodologies. For example, we have the insider research, and we have other things that we should consider, all right, in terms of, at the end of the day, let's put it this way. The lecturers under me, in Selangor, they gotta start reading. They have to read. But it's not that I don't like other publishers, but in the social sciences, the content is very, very important. Reading is very
Thank you.
it's crucial.
Yeah, true. Well, as for me, I just want to, really put emphasis on the importance of continuing education. See, we've been talking about new learnings, new job descriptions, new tasks that will remain, a human task, not that can never be, be a machine accomplished task. So continuing education is really, really important. It is essential. When you do continuing education, you are assured that you continue to be competent in your trade or in your profession, and this is an ongoing process. And lifelong learning is the thing. Now, it ensures that your capabilities can keep pace with the current standards. See, it's very, very important. And a continuing education ensures that you and your knowledge, the things that the things that you understand about your task, stay relevant and up to date. And more importantly, continuing education will help you make meaningful contributions to your institutions. And well, it helps you to stay interesting, right?
Yes.
If you're very up to date.
Yeah,
To make it
I think
interesting.
it's so true. I think in my closing, I think I was engaged in a conversation when I did my my executive MBA program, and then someone was talking about. So when I was in my secondary school, and I think that would be, I think junior high or college, I was in one of the worst schools ever that you can find it in the UK. It is it's like all sorts of things are happening. No one is interested in learning. But I think it's also important for people to realize that actually the world is in their hands. The university, whether it's a good university or a not so good university, is really about how you apply what you have learned in your daily life and in your research. It is really about you. You can make a difference in the world. No one else can make it for you. We can talk all day long about the future of work, but if any one of our delegates says, if you come and say, oh, you know what, yeah, this good talk itself, I go back to my old ways, then it doesn't work. I leave every one of our delegates with a challenge. Ask yourself this one fundamental question. What can I do different tomorrow or even today that I've always done previously that will make my life easier and will propel my career in the future? Ask yourself that question, and if you want to share with us, we are more than happy to hear it. But with that, I thank my fellow panelists, Elvira, who is the University Librarian at University of Philippines, Diliman. Great to have you, really engaging conversation. And Professor Guy, you know, when the first time I met you, I knew I wanted to have a conversation with you. It was at IPLA, was it? Or some, yeah, I met Dr. Cassia first, yeah? And I think your take of research at UITM brings a new perspective of how researchers of tomorrow, both you and Elvira, I think bring the forward-thinking people of tomorrow. So thank you so much for your contribution. I appreciate it. And for all of our guests itself, ask questions and have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much. This is not the end of the session because we have some questions, great questions coming in, and I'm going to invite Prof. Guy to answer some of this question. And Prof. Guy, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Great. Okay. So the first question here, it says, in regards to technology in education, what are your take on sustainability and affordance of technology post-COVID-19? We are talking about a new norm. What are some policies and frameworks that you think need to be implemented for it to be succeed?
For it to be successful.
For it to be success, sorry.
Okay. I started conducting research on EdTech, education technology, in 1998 when I returned from Oklahoma, USA. So 20 years passed. We find that everybody's have jumped on the bandwagon. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to offer all these online classes and start charging the people. But my take and my concern on this is that when you start trying to keep up with technology, that is not something that I would encourage because of the cost. When we have something new, you want to change all the features. For example, if you have iPhone 10, you haven't really used all the features in the iPhone, and suddenly you want to go into the next one, okay? So for me, when you do the online courses, there are other elements, the hidden elements of education. I call this deep learning because it's just one of, when it comes to online learning, at the end of the day, if we are to have other prerequisites along the same area of study, the student may not be able to recall the one that he or she has studied before this. Another thing that I would is of utmost concern for me is the legacy systems. One time when I was studying COBOL in college, now it's not in use anymore. And at the same time, you see hackers and crackers coming in. So that for me, the legacy system is important, yet we have to keep up with the times. So that's my take on education and technology.
Thank you. And I can see that Elvira is also online. So maybe I'll post the next question to Elvira then. Elvira, are you on?
Hi, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm very sorry because I was also in another meeting. I'm sorry.
No worries, you're in time for the Q&A.
Sure.
And the next question they have here is, for me, the technology is there in teaching and learning, but the human touch, like you mentioned earlier, like to develop their whole human character is still lacking. So for me, this is our big challenge. So what is, any comments from Hugh?
I agree with that.
Okay, go Professor G.
Okay.
Yes,
I
please.
agree with that. The human touch is very, very important because when you have students right in front of you, you can read the body language. When the students are online, sometimes they are online, but they're not there. You get what I mean? because you can have it activated, but you can't see whether they are actually there. Usually students doze off after 20 minutes. That's the only time when you can pay attention. That has been, cited before, and I agree with that. Now, at the end of the day, for me, the students got to, when they study, they got to have something that will remain with them throughout their life, right? It's not something that is one-off. Lifelong learning is very, very important to me, and learning even from people younger than me is also something that I look forward to. Thank you.
Well, for me, on that aspect, human touch, it's really about, connection. You see, and actually the opportunity to engage students, it's really quite different when you just have to, be giving, like, say, very specific to my work as a librarian. Yeah, we do have all this technology for virtual reference. Like, you can, we have this service called Ask a Librarian. It's through instant messaging, or it can be through an email. But it doesn't replace, for me, it will never replace the kind of engagement, the kind of connection that you have when you have to do it face to face with the student. If I may add to the point made by Professor G on, seeing their body language, having that opportunity to understand better what it is that they really need. It's more of, the presence. You see, the presence of someone there who will have, who will make you uh, explain better what it is that you need. It is different when you have to do it face to face. It's like you can easily get or throw in questions that will, make his or her inquiry a lot clearer. And you can do that if you're just, doing it like, say, okay, I'll send you an email, I'll answer, I'll respond, and then send me another email if you have a further question. Yeah, it's really totally different. So for me, that aspect, that human aspect, is something that, I terribly miss, especially in this time, no, that we really cannot, or are not able to do it for our students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I miss that
it's
too.
really sad. It's really sad.
Because, like I said, for Malaysia, not everybody is fluent in English. But when they come to UITM, they have to, as lectures are conducted at 100% English. So you see, some of the students are not able to follow, and they do ask me to tone down, and they do ask me to speak bilingual. So,
Oh.
that's very important in learning and teaching. But in online teaching, you can't do that. It's seriously one way.
Yeah, true, true. I agree. I agree.
Okay, so the next question is, I think is, yeah, well, anyway, if anyone can jump in, of course, Professor, it says, what's the quality of candidate for a lecturer job in current now? Someone's probably interested in applying a job.
What's the quality? What's the quantity?
What is the
quality.
quality of candidate for a lecturer job in current now?
Well, if you fulfill the criteria, the main basic criteria, which is a PhD, usually you can get in, right? Even though you have retired from school and you want to go into college and teach, if you fulfill the criteria, you can get in. But let me tell you, for public universities, the job, the loading doesn't remain just teaching, the students. There are other areas that you have to comply. So that's the difference. At the universities, you got to research and write. Some people are not able to shoulder that. Thank you.
Elvira, any comments?
Um, well, if we are to talk about requirements to teach or become a lecturer or a professor, I agree with Professor G that it has to be, a higher level to say this, qualifications to be able to teach. But then again, we also have to consider now that there are a lot of venues wherein you can actually share knowledge and teach. Well, maybe it's going to be quite different if you're going to be looking towards a position in a university of how should I describe it? A university that is ranked quite high in university rankings. I'm sure they're going to have very high qualification requirements for that. So it's really um, more than it being a legal requirement. It's more of really keeping with some standards, right? So if you're really keen, or if you have goals of being part of the faculty of an institution, a university, you just have to be compliant of all those requirements. And if you're really up to it, invest. You really have to invest in it, right? So you can just up your qualifications. It's really something that you just have to do.
Sure. Teaching is a noble profession. So if your heart set on teaching at the university level, you must have passion too. Because you must be able to know what are the horizons, the new horizons in academia. Okay?
Yeah, and you know what they say about it? It's more than a profession. It's a vocation. Teaching is a vocation. It's a calling, right? It's a
Yeah.
calling. You must have it. Otherwise, you'll just you just gonna find yourself burning out easily. Teaching is a vocation. It's not for everyone. Actually,
When you become a professor, actually, you have to have a leadership by example. So you must practice good ethics and integrity.
Well, Professor always give us very good golden words. In fact, some people ask again, Professor, what are the 3 words that you shared earlier in the conversation earlier? Passion, persistence, and patience.
Precision.
Precision.
Passion, precision, accuracy, and patience.
That's right. This is the 3 golden words from Professor Guy.
Nothing in life is easy. You just have to go for it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know we have overrun a little bit, but I think this is a great conversation, and we have such a great crowd. Thank you so much, Professor Guy and Elvira. This is really fantastic. Thank you everyone for coming. We're so happy to have all of you today for sure. And be aware that we will be sending your e-certificate to your email by Friday. So do help us to fill in a survey form after this session, and it's going to be sent to your email. And like I say, the questions that we're not able to answer, we'll come back to you in another time.
Yeah. So if you want to join my research team, please contact me. Thank you.
Yes, please contact Professor Guy.
That would be great, Professor Guy.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy. And thank you. That's the end of the webinar. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.